Y'all, when you look at your brother, man, you got to see yourself. Got to see the God within him.
Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and if the person screws you or not, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And people have horror story. One person might have a horror story with this guy, and then the next guy he really helped, and all that. I mean, we
Yeah.
went through.
Even like you're saying, even like the representation that you mentioned Francois Glassman, like the representation that you have as a Canadian also makes a difference. If you have somebody that's representing you as a Canadian or somebody who only knows the Canadian market, and
Same boat.
they're taking you to a European market, and they have to
Mhm.
represent you. I think like there's a funny story that I remember somebody told me, and it kind of painted the picture of how football works. I think a lot of people don't understand. There's a guy who was a former football player friend of mine, and we were in a camp one time, and he was telling me how he became an agent, and one of the players he used to play with became a coach. And when he was an agent, he was with the coach when he first started. He's like he really wanted to be a very pure good coach. He said, I don't care about agents or agencies or affiliations. I want to take the players that I feel are the best players for the positions that I need, and I'll take those players regardless of transfer fees or whatever money goes behind closed doors. I just want to do this purely to try and make the best team possible. He did that, and then after a few months, he got fired because the team didn't do well. So this next time that he had a chance to go and build a team, he said, okay, you know what? I'm going to take the best opportunities I can to make money off the transfers that I can. And at the end of the day, he realizes it's not always in his hands whether the team succeeds or not. So as a coach, the best thing he can do is take care of himself. And when you have a situation like that, imagine being in that position and you have somebody who's coming from a Canadian market trying to get a player into that coach's team. Unless you have a way to be able to offer him something that, financially or whatnot, that he can be able to get an incentive out of, you're not going to make that transfer. And that's why representation matters. And beyond representation is also your background. It matters because then there's so many things that are involved in it that people
They don't understand.
well,
There's so
they
many
don't. They don't.
nuances.
It's not a part of the story that's supposed to be told. It's the business of it. People don't tell how they do business.
Let me tell you something that's crazy, and you tell me if you believe me. All right, and I'm pretty sure you will, because this is the because I look at you and I know exactly where things went awry and what happened. I can kind of look at it based on the teams and how it happened, because you don't go from AEK and doing what you did there and then going to where you went to next. Like I know, right? So we're talking real here, and that's what I mean by we're not. This is not for clicks. This is for us, people like me and you, and people that are like me and you. So this is not for the others. All right.
Okay.
I had a situation in Belgium where we weren't getting paid in Royal Antwerp. I'm about 20 years old now. I signed a 5-year deal. It's the first division club, right? 5-year deal. The guy that signed the deal just got in the car and left me there. I was in the hotel for about 4 months. I got paid once, right? I'm a young guy.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there. It's a Man U, kind of like, like when you have a relationship, one of those lower clubs in a lower league. So Man U, right. So you had some Man U guys there, whatever. We're in the hotel, didn't get paid, got impatient. And as a young player, listening to the older guys who are griping and complaining about their money, and they say, what are you doing here? You're so young. Why don't you go somewhere else? And so I'm listening to these guys, and eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go find another club. So I get my agent to get me out of it somehow, and I get out of it, and then I end up back in Canada, the swamp. So anyways, 2 years later, because I signed something with a gentleman from Hamilton Thunder that I shouldn't have signed, but he kept me there. Of course, called the national team, asked them, hey man, this team folded. Do I have my release? Nobody said a word. So I sat out for an entire year thinking that I was still contracted to this team that didn't even exist anymore. So I missed a whole year of my 21st birthday. My whole year I missed. So that's how I ended up at Toronto Lynx. 6 months later in Hungary, I played well, but I played really well off the bench. Sparta Prague comes and they're like, hey man, we want this guy to play the last game of the season. So I played the last game. They like me and they buy me. I get a call from these two gentlemen that I never knew. I never met them at all. And God is my witness. Trust me. There's two guys there when I got the call. Andrew Ornock was there because we used to live together. And I got the call, and this dude says, hey, you're going to meet me in this, like, in the Centrum. You know what I mean? Like, just to get a coffee. I'm like, who are you? Oh, don't worry. I'm the one that's responsible for your transfer going to Sparta Prague.
Yeah.
Bro, I meet with these guys. They lay out exactly what's going to happen to me. You're going to go to Sparta Prague. They're going to, this is what your salary is going to be. You're going to give us 25% of that. You're going to get put on loan to Jablonec. And after that, you're going to be back in Sparta Prague. And then you're going to go to Holland. I'm like, how do you know exactly what is going to happen? How do you know this?
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry about it. Whatever. So, of course, like a real Canadian, I'm like, I'm not going to be duped by these guys. So I go back and I call Atiba and I'm like, hey, Atiba, the deal's pretty much done, but I need someone to represent me that I can trust. So at the time, he was using a lawyer. I won't name his name because I don't want to get sued. And so he did the deal. The deal was pretty much done, but he just did the paperwork, whatever. And so I basically screwed these guys out of their money. I didn't know this at the time. Yeah. Bro, I get into Sparta. The Hungarian team didn't pay me my last paycheck. I had 2 days to get to Sparta Prague. I had to borrow money to get the train. I show up there. They had to give me my bonus right away because I was broke. The whole nine. Bro, when I screwed those two agents, man, all of a sudden, I was on the team. I was scheduled to be, I was number 12. I was scheduled. I got my suit for UEFA Cup. I was scheduled to play against Hearts, Espanyol. Bro, the same week, I got put on loan to a newly promoted team. And I screwed those agents and nothing went well. The team Jablonec, all of a sudden, they said, oh, the owner's in the World Cup and he's not being back in time. He's not. And everything just started to get real weird.
Yeah. I mean, a huge part of it is that people who do this, they, how can I say this? I mean, given the situation you just explained to me, I'm sure they could have handled it better so that you could have gone along with it, but they didn't. They went to a 20-year-old kid from a foreign country who's there by himself, and they spooked him. And for them, it's just normal. It's normal that you take this information in and you say, okay, yeah, that's the way it's got to be. And that's the way it's got to be. They expect you to be afraid of them. But like, as you said, as somebody who's Canadian, you have this thing where you say, I don't need to.
I got it right.
Do it. Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, not to sound dumb, but there's people that come from different places in the world where this might be something that you see as a normalcy in how things work, and you say, okay, well, if this is my only chance of doing it, then I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Like you said, if you come from certain places where you say, no, there's other things that I can do to protect myself from the legalities of this, you can do it. But then if you don't know how the business works behind the legalities of it, then you end up in no man's land, what you call. That happens. There's a lot of players that are on rosters that are in no man's land, or a lot of players that are on rosters that are there because somebody said, okay, we'll do this and this for you as long as you play along, and that guy plays along, and then you end up you wonder to yourself, how is it possible this guy's playing on that team? That's how. There's always that one or a few players that you ask yourself, how is that guy on this team?
Is he on the team?
Why is this guy on that team? And
why is he happy? Why is he happy on the bench? How is he getting a paycheck?
That is the business end of it, because like I said, I mean, there's only so much a coach can do to determine whether the team is successful or not. And the rest of it is out of his hands. So the rest that he can put into his hands is, how do I get my own personal business satisfaction out of it? And there's a lot of players that are just being bought and sold for the sole purpose of coaches making sure they get their money out of it.
Some people really are. And as the sun sets and the night falls,